Today I am really excited to show you all of the books that I've read this year, the books that I'm finishing up, and whether I would recommend these books or not. Some of them were like life-changing books. I'll probably read them again. Some of them I would not recommend to anyone. So this will be a fun video. I do love to read, and I know a lot of you guys do as well. So let's just get to it. I do want to share really quick. So I decided this year I had a goal of doing the 5x5 challenge by the Scholé sisters, which is basically where you choose 5 books in 5 separate categories, so then you read broader and deeper than you typically would. So typically I feel like most people just tend to gravitate towards the same genres that they always like. So for me, I feel like that's usually books like on theology or parenting or health. Those are the ones I just naturally gravitate towards, but I never read fiction or like the classics. That's why I was excited to start this challenge, just to challenge me to go broader into different genres, but then also go deeper. So that's why you read 5 books in each genre that you choose, so then you go deep into that genre. I ended up not totally sticking to the challenge just because sometimes there's just a book that I really want to read and it just was not anywhere in my thing, and I just couldn't help it. And then there's also some books that kind of thwarted all of my plans, like the one that I'm reading right now. But let's just get into it. So these are not in the order that I read them, but that doesn't matter. So the first one is 8 Women of Faith. This is one that I read with the women at our church. It's a very short read. It was very interesting. So the 8 women it talks about are Jane Grey, Margaret Baxter, Anne Dutton, Sarah Edwards, Anne Steele, Esther Edwards Burr, Anne Judson, and Jane Austen. And it's been a while since I've read this. This sounds kind of bad, but I feel like my thoughts during this book was like, are these the only women we have to offer? Which I know that sounds horrible. I think I was thinking of it as like the 8 greatest Christian women that ever existed, and it wasn't that. Like with Esther Edwards Burr, she's the daughter of Jonathan Edwards, and it talks about how she is like biblical friendship, which was great. But I think I was thinking of like the most interesting Christian woman that ever existed. Some of the women were like very interesting, like Jane Grey. It says she's the courageous Protestant martyr who held fast to her conviction that salvation is by faith alone, even to the point of death. So that's where I think I was expecting the whole book to be like that, and it wasn't. It was still a good book. I would recommend this one. Next, this is Church History 101, The Highlights of 20 Centuries, and it's by Sinclair Ferguson, Joel Beakey, and Michael Haken. This one was very good. I was expecting it to be a lot longer. I ordered it on Amazon, so I didn't see it before I ordered it, and I didn't check how many pages it was, but if you see, it's like a really tiny book. But it's actually really great because if you just want something like a quick timeline of church history over the last 2,000 years, it just gives you each century starting from the 1st century and just like a couple pages on it. I would definitely recommend this. It's just very small. I feel like it's like a starting place, which is why, to kind of skip ahead, that's why I'm reading this book. So this one is like a lot more extensive. This is 2,000 Years of Christ's Power. An elder from our church recommended it to me because after I read this, I was like, okay, I want more. And this one has, I think, 5 or 6 volumes. I'm still on the first, but this is in my still reading pile. Next, we have Desiring God by John Piper. I had read this in college when I first started getting into theology, and then recently I saw it on my shelf and I was like, I'd like to read that again. So I did, and there was definitely some really good things that stood out to me. There was a section that talks about the 3 stages of worship. So it says there is a final stage in which we feel an unencumbered joy and the manifold perfection of God. And then in a prior stage that we often taste, we do not feel fullness, but rather longing and desire. And then the lowest stage of worship, where all genuine worship starts and where often returns for a dark season, is the barrenness of soul that scarcely feels any longing and yet is still granted the grace of repentant sorrow for having so little love. And then later on it says, if God were not gloriously desirable, why would we feel sorrowful for not feasting fully on his beauty? I just remember that section stood out to me because I've definitely felt all 3 of those like stages of worship, and it was just nice to see it in words. So definitely recommend this book. Next This one was a fun read. The author, his tone was fun. It's called Show Them Jesus, and it's about sharing the gospel to children. It wasn't exactly what I was expecting. I was more so thinking from a parent to their child. It's more so from the perspective of a Sunday school teacher to his Sunday school classrooms, which it was still a really interesting read. He had a lot of great analogies. So I definitely recommend this one. Okay, me and my friends read Jane Eyre this year, and I took it to the beach. So that's why it's just totally disheveled. I had never read Jane Eyre before, and it was so good. It was not the ending that I was expecting. I don't know, I don't want to spoil too much, so if anyone wants to discuss Jane Eyre, message me on Instagram. But yeah, I definitely recommend this book. It's basically about this girl named Jane who has a really hard life growing up. She becomes a governess. Trying to think what else to say without spoiling it. She works for Mr. Rochester, and it's really good. Okay. This is one of the few books that I read in literally 4 days, which for me that's fast. For some people, I feel like some people can read a book in 2 days. Atomic Habits. I feel like this is a very popular book. I see tons of people have it on their bookshelf, but this is one of those books, if you're someone who loves to be productive and disciplined and have goals and all of those things, then this is the book for you. So many of the things he talks about in this book I think about every day. It's basically all about setting habits and also how to break bad habits. So he talks about the habit loop, which is the cue, then the craving, then the response, and then the reward, and how you can build all of your habits based off that. And then he goes deeper into each one and how to use it to your advantage. Another thing I love is they make it so easy in this book. So at the end of every chapter, there's a small summary of all of the most important points you need to know. And then he also has resources for free online. There is an app, but it's a paid app. So it was free when I got it, and then they switched it to paid. So I liked it when it was free. And then another thing I love about the book is at the beginning of each chapter, he has a very interesting story to show how that habit tool was used. I will say the only thing I can think of that I disagreed with this book, because I don't think he's coming from a Christian perspective, there was one that talked about identity. If you were someone who's I've always been told I have amazing nails, I'm just known for my nails, then that would be motivation for you to keep up that habit because you have it attached to your identity, because you're I am known for my nails, so I'm gonna keep up my nails. But as a Christian, I feel that more so just feeds into pride. So I wouldn't totally agree with that mindset. But I will say the rest of the book is super good. So far, I would say all of the books I recommend, except Atomic Habits and Jane Eyre, I super recommend. And that's the same with this book. This one changed my life. That's my favorite kind of book, is the one where you walk away and you find things to implement into your life. This book really changed my life, and if you've heard how obsessed I am with sleep, this book is a huge part of that, a giant part of it. And then I also happened to read this book right around the time that my mom got me an Oura Ring. Since then, I'm just obsessed with sleep. This book is called Why We Sleep. Once again, it's not written by a Christian author, so there are some things that you kind of have to, just read cautiously. There's some chapters that go into evolution, and yeah, I'm sure there's other things that we as Christians would disagree with. Overall, great life-changing book. It talks about how a lack of sleep is highly related to things like cancer and Alzheimer's, and basically just any bad thing in life is related to a lack of sleep. So even they call it beauty sleep for a reason. They did a study where they had people have 4 hours of sleep, and then they had the same people have 8 or 9 hours of sleep, and then had pictures of them from each day side by side, and then they had people say which one they felt was more attractive, and it was crazy numbers of everyone. I mean, which I feel that's obvious, if you get more sleep then you're gonna look more rested and whatever, but he even goes into how your mood is with the lack of sleep, how mentally with it you are. Another really interesting thing is he talked about people who would stay up really late the night before studying for a test compared to people who maybe studied a little but got a really good night of sleep, and how they typically did better because they had more time for their brain to, like, I guess, process all that information. And then another thing was, apparently, I forget all the correct wording, but someone who had stayed up really late, like let's say they woke up at 7 a.m. and then went to sleep at 2 a.m. was like just as inebriated as someone who was drunk. So he was talking about how dangerous it is to be on that little sleep and driving at night. It's just as bad as someone who's over like the legal alcohol limit or whatever it's called. This book is super interesting. I would definitely recommend this book. Okay, this is one that we read with our church. Our church has like a book study, and it's called What Happens When We Worship. It was very interesting. It just made you think deeper about what's going on when we worship, why we're there. It goes into like every aspect of the liturgy and why we do it. So that was very interesting. This isn't one that I read in like 4 days or I'm like super excited about, but it was a good book. So recommend. I read so many good books this year. Okay, Seeing Green, highly recommend. This book is great. This book is all about envy, and envy is one of those sins that, like, as a Christian, I feel like can be hard to admit to, but realistically, I believe we all struggle with it. I know I do, and I have. But yeah, this is like a book where if you want to be like convicted, read this book. One of the things she talks about in here is how envy can ruin relationships. If you're envious of someone, that can ruin your relationship because most of the time the other person can feel it in the way you're acting towards them. It also talks about how envy can hinder your own growth in many aspects of life. But one of them is like, let's say, hypothetically, you had a friend whose home was just always like totally spotless and you were just envious of it. Like every time you went over, you just like secretly were so envious of her clean home, and you were like excited when you saw something was messy. That would be envy. And it also hinders your own growth because instead of being like, man, your home is so clean, like teach me how you do it, that's amazing, you're just like quietly envious and like almost hate it for the person. That's gonna hinder your own growth because you're not gonna be able to learn all of these cool things from her on how she keeps her home clean because you're just like sitting in your envy. It also like goes a lot into like the definition of envy. Let me see. Oh yeah, right here. It says, so jealousy is a feeling of discomfort and anger that something you have is being threatened. This means that jealousy can sometimes be righteous. Like, so if you feel like someone's going after your husband, that would be like a righteous jealousy because that's something that's yours. You know, if it's, I don't know. But then covetousness is the desire for what someone else possesses. It would be satisfied simply to have what the other person has. So if they have like a clean home and then you get a clean home and you're happy and everything's fine, that's covetousness. Whereas envy, in contrast, takes it personally that the other person has what he has and would be satisfied to see the possession or quality destroyed rather than see the other person enjoying it. It's really ugly. So it's really, really an ugly sin, but I think this is a great book to help us as Christian women confront it, just be more aware of it so that we can actually grow, because the more you deny the sin of envy, you're just not going to grow from it. And I think this book has helped me a lot. Not saying that I don't still struggle with it, but it's definitely helps me be more aware of it and then like check my heart in those situations. So highly recommend. So this book is from the Puritan Treasures for Today like collection that Reformation Heritage Book sells. This one is called The Vanity of Thoughts, and it's by Thomas Goodwin. So it's written by the Puritans. This one is all about considering your thoughts and yeah, just fighting your sinful thoughts. One quote that I love from this one says, "Consider your thoughts that you might be humbled, but for all their multitude do not be discouraged, for God has more thoughts of mercy than you have of rebellion." This was a good book. I'm excited to finish the rest of this whole, what's it called, collection series. And they're all like really small, so reading them could help me get back to my book reading goals. Okay, Risen Motherhood. Part of my 5x5, I guess I didn't share my categories. They got kind of thwarted, so I don't even know if I really have categories anymore. But one of my categories was podcast books. So I basically wanted to read books from all of my favorite podcasts. So I love the Risen Motherhood podcast. I love Allie Beth Stuckey's podcast, so I wanted to read some of her books. I love The Pactum, and I think Mike Avendroth, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but he wrote a book on covenant theology that I wanted to read. Oh, and then Haunted Cosmos, they wrote a book, which I don't know if that one would scare me because sometimes the podcast scares me. But yeah, so one of my categories was podcast books, so that's why I read this one. It's just such like a girly book because, you know, it's just so pretty on the inside and it's like a quick read. It's basically just thinking about all of these different areas of life, your heart, marriage, birth experiences, postpartum, food choices, relationships, etc., and applying the gospel to all of those situations. So this was definitely a good book. I would recommend this one. Okay, man, I read so many good books this year. This one is Hannah's Children. This is one of the other books that I read in like 4 days because it was so good. Quietly define the birth dearth. But this one, it's talking about like large families and all of these different women that the author interviewed and their thoughts on large families, why they decided to have a large family. Her like definition of a large family in here was more than 5 children, but that's just her definition. But in this book, I just felt like so understood in so many ways. And one of them, this is a quote from one of the moms that she interviewed, but she said, there's like this moment that happens after every kid. There are definitely clear moments where it's like, I am so not ready yet. And you're nursing or you're having issues mentally and you're like, I'm not ready. And there's a vessel that is not ready for it. But then there's a shift, and after that, that's usually when I would be like, okay, I can handle this again. Or it wasn't even me saying that, it was God saying or putting that thought or those feelings into my psyche, but I'm ready for this. Not all of the women in here are Christians. Most of them, I think, aren't, which is actually interesting. But with that one, I definitely could relate to because I feel like every time after having a baby, I'm like, Josh, I think this is our last baby. Like, I think I'm done. And my husband would have like a million children. He would prefer that we never do anything to prevent, which I admire. And then like over the months, suddenly my mind starts like slowly changing. This time I think it was around like 8 months where I was like, actually I think I do want to have more. But it's just funny because it happens literally every single time we have a baby where I'm like, I don't know, I think we might be done. And then like a couple months later, I'm like, I want a baby so bad. Another quote I appreciated was this mother said, God's not out to trick us and to send us trouble. He really wants to send us blessings. But yeah, they also talk about just how the birth rates are going down and how we can solve that. Different things that other countries like Sweden have tried to do, like incentivizing having more babies, but how they typically don't work. If I remember correctly, I think she just goes into like faith in a higher power being related to the birth rate going up. Great book. Definitely recommend this one. Man. Pilgrim's Progress. I read this one with my friend this year. Very good. It's definitely one of those ones where there's so many characters representing different things in the Christian walk. A lot of the characters, you can like think of times in your life or people in your life that kind of represent those characters to you. And yeah, this is definitely like, I feel like a Christian classic that you should just read, you know? I recommend it. Read it. We've made it. This is called The Violent Bear It Away by Flannery O'Connor. This book was horrible. Absolutely horrible. I read this book because if you are like a Memoria Press mom, they have an article on their website that's written by Stuart Cawthron? Something like that. This is one of the books he recommends, and he says that like I think every Christian should read this classic or whatever. And some of them were good, like some of them were, Anna Karenina was on there, I forget what else. I was like, okay, I'll read this one because they were having a book club where they were all reading it, and I was like, I'll read it with the book club. And it's just a horrible book. It's really weird. It's really weird. It's really interesting though, so I did read it quickly because I was like, where is this going? Where's like the redemptive aspect? There isn't one, I would say. I forget all the names because it's been a while since I've read it, but it's about this older guy who believes he's a prophet. He like lives out in the woods, he's crazy. And then he takes his grandson, I forget, or his sister's grandson, I forget, but someone younger than him that's related to him, and he basically steals him from his uncle because he wants to baptize him. And the uncle comes and like tries to save him, but then he like tries to shoot the uncle. So then the uncle just doesn't come back. And then this guy who believes he's a prophet raises this boy to believe that he's going to take his place and be the next prophet. The guy ends up dying. It's really dark. It's really dark and weird. And the way it ends is even darker. It's very, very dark. Like, I don't even know if I could tell you what happens. Like, if YouTube would get mad at me. Do not recommend. Martin Cothran. I don't know what he was thinking. I don't know. Next is Beauty is Your Destiny. This is another one that an elder from our church recommended. Me and my friend were like reading books together and we asked for recommendations. He recommended this one. And then we just really didn't enjoy it a ton. So this book is all about beauty, the beauty of God, how God is beauty, the beatific vision, how we all long to see God face to face. It was one that I enjoyed. I don't know if I can say I enjoyed it. It was one that I think I enjoyed the first chapter, and I felt like it was one of those books that could have just been like an article or like a booklet. Sometimes I feel like there's books where they like draw it out to like fill up a book instead of just saying what they want to say. And this felt like that to me. I mean, it's a good book. Like, it's all about God and beauty. But, so I don't want to say I don't like it or recommend it, because obviously I agree with everything it says. I love everything it says. But I felt like it was more of like a, yeah, that's right. Or like I just feel like it could have been an article, you know? Okay, this one, Weapons of Mass Instruction, a school teacher's journey through the dark world of compulsory schooling. So this one was interesting. It was recommended to me by my sister-in-law, who I think had read it this year. I honestly can't remember a ton to even tell you about it, which maybe tells you what I think of it. I did like it. I remember it felt a little slow to me. I do remember though there was a lot of interesting stories, like talking about how back then children were a lot more capable. They'd be like kings at like 11. There was a story of like a boy who sailed across like some huge body of water all by himself at like 9 or something like that. So just, yeah, talking about how children are a lot more capable, how the school system is dumbing them down. So a lot of things I would definitely agree with, but I don't think it was like anything new for me, so maybe that's why I wasn't like obsessed with it. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the books that I'm like partly finished with and that I hope to finish. Definitely not by the end of the year, because some of them are big ones. Books that I still want to finish soon. So honestly, I should probably read all of these before I buy any new books. I already showed you 2,000 Years of Christ's Power. This one is actually really good. I remember the elder from our church that recommended it said that it reads like a narrative, which I definitely see what he says. It's very interesting. And at the end of each chapter, like for example, when you read about Plato and Augustus, at the end of the chapter, it gives you quotes by those people. So then you can kind of like see an example of what they thought and how they spoke. Yeah, it also gives you like just a refresher on what you read. So a rundown of all the important people. So this one I'm actually really loving so far. I'm maybe a third of the way through it, and I would like to read all of the volumes. So maybe that'll be my goal for next year. Next is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I had heard someone on a podcast just say this is like a classic book, and my husband is like super into like finances and investing. So this is kind of a book I wanted to read just to have like more conversation with my husband. Honestly though, he'd probably rather me read about like the stock market and crypto. But the things I told him from this book, he was very interested in. So hard is not the same thing as bad. This book, I don't know what it is. I really do enjoy it, but I just cannot finish it. I've been reading this book for like 2 years now, I think. And it's like not even a hard book. Like it's really, I should have finished it by now. I don't know why I haven't. And every time I read it, I have great takeaways. And I love the author. I'm not gonna attempt to say her last name. M is for Mama. That's what she's known as. I really need to finish this book because I actually do enjoy it. I just don't know why I'm not finishing it. I think I'm just like excited about other things. Next. This is the main book I'm reading right now. It's The Count of Monte Cristo. It's a huge book. It's 1,200 pages. This is the longest book I've ever read. Right now I'm about, let's see, I'm in the 500s, so almost halfway. And I have a feeling this one is just going to be what I read for the rest of the year. I'm hoping to finish it just before the new year. This book is like amazing. Like, you are just so gripped. This is a book that messes with my sleep score because I have like my whole routine every night of what I want to do to get good sleep. And it ends with me reading my book with my book light that's like, it's like a red light book light. So it doesn't like strain your eyes as much. And it kind of like relaxes you as you're going to sleep and reading. But this book is so interesting that I don't want to go to sleep. I just want to keep reading. So I've definitely stayed up like an hour past when I want to go to sleep just reading this book. If I just had so much more time, I would just love to go like read this in the bath right now. But I don't have time. This is amazing. I mean, I haven't finished it yet, but so far I highly recommend. I've also never heard the plotline of The Count of Monte Cristo, so I don't even know what happens, which I feel like is like the best. Like, if you've never heard of it, you need to read it because not knowing what happens and reading it is so fun. Okay, next is Anna Karenina. I also read this one because Martin Cothran recommended it on the Memoria Press website. And yeah, this is another example of a book that I'm really loving and enjoying. But then I started Jane Eyre with my friends and we were on like a timeline, so that was my priority. And then I started The Count of Monte Cristo with my friends, and then we're also like kind of on a timeline and trying to read it together, so I'm prioritizing this. So even though I'm like loving this one, obsessed with it, it's just kind of on the back burner. I mean, I still highly recommend, even though I haven't finished it. And then lastly, I did just buy this one recently, which with all the unfinished books, I definitely shouldn't have, but I feel like this is a book that I almost need right now. It's called The Gospel Comes with a House Key. Many women at my church, I've heard them talking about it. Honestly, I just feel like it's a book that I need because I feel like as a mom of 5 children, I can sometimes put hospitality or like hosting people for dinner or stuff like that on the back burner because I'm so busy with all my children and like they're where my focus is, which I think to an extent is true, but I think I abuse it some. I just felt like this would be a good book for me. We also just had a situation, which I don't want to like air too many details, but with a neighbor that just made me wish that I would just reach out to my neighbors more. And I'm kind of like a naturally introverted person, so I typically am not the person to like start a conversation or just reach out to someone. I really want to be because I feel like as Christians we should be. So with all of that going on, I ordered this book because I felt like maybe it would speak to that. Also, one more book that I read this year that I don't have because a friend is borrowing. Oh wait, no, 2 more. One is, I think it's 72. It's How to Talk to Anyone, 92 Little Tricks for Big Success in Relationships. So this book is like punchy, like it just has, each little rule is only 2 or 3 pages and it has interesting stories about just random tips for like relationships. And I feel though it's more geared towards like business relationships, like if you're wanting to win the client, or like dating, if you're wanting to like catch someone's attention. And I'm just like not in that phase of life. I more so just wanted to learn how to be less awkward. And I don't really feel like it spoke to that as much. So I enjoyed it and some of the stuff was interesting, but I also felt like most of it didn't really apply to me. And then the last one, which I've talked about a ton, is The Battle for the American Mind. That one's all about classical education, and it's by Pete Hegseth, who is our Secretary of Defense right now. And that one is like, if you want to get amped up about classical education, like it will just make you feel like on fire about classical education, or at least it did for me. So I definitely highly recommend that one. I will in the description box like put all of the books I read, and then I'll put them in order from like highly recommend to Flannery O'Connor at the end. But yeah, so that's everything. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. I post videos every Tuesday and Thursday, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.